So in the last talk, when we were sitting in Goldsmith Courtyard, and we were talking about work issues and life issues, and how that plays into creative problem solving. We're extending that in this next talk, and really looking at work and life together, and some topics that have to do with how you combine work and life. So we're going to be looking initially here at 4 topics that have to do with work and life, and really how we combine those two together in a creative age. And the first of those topics has to do with the fact that we are individually responsible for maintaining our own creativity. In an organizational age, a lot of the responsibility for development was given to the corporation, or to your employer, and that they were seen as the agent for your career development. And people often stayed with the same employer for most of their career, and they were being bumped up the ladder, and that whole advancement was built into the corporate structure. But in a creative age, we are much more individually responsible for maintaining our creativity by several ways. One is through self-education, and self-education is a huge thing these days. I'm required to keep my registration as an architect to have a certain number of continuing education credits, hours of continuing education all the time. That didn't exist in the organizational age, but that's very much a part of the creative age. So in many, many disciplines, that continuing education is essential for keeping your registration or keeping your job. But we're responsible for educating ourselves and advancing ourselves and learning more and more. And honestly, for a lot of people, this is a cool thing. There was a survey done among media professionals in New York a while back that said that the average media professional spends 13.5 hours a week on self-education. That if you're in that very competitive field, you're constantly trying to keep yourself up with what's new and what's moving and what I need to know to do my job better. We're also responsible for self-stimulation, for just having experiences that provoke ideas and give us a little more variety of options to be thinking about. And that stimulation, of course, can be a hell of a lot of fun. Take a 3-week vacation and go to Egypt and sail up the Nile, and oh my God, the farming is so interesting here, and it's completely different than anything I've ever seen in the United States, and these ancient civilizations, and it's stimulating. It makes you think things you wouldn't think otherwise. And we're responsible for that kind of self-stimulation. And we're also responsible for lifelong learning, for just not thinking, okay, I got my degree, I've got my education, I'm done. No, keeping your whole life being about learning and advancing. And of course, these days, it's just kind of impossible. You have to keep up. Things change too quickly. You have to be a lifelong learner to survive in a creative age. So the first thing about work and life is sometimes jiggering your work and your life so that you're getting this continuous self-education, self-stimulation, and lifelong learning. Then a second work and life issue is about defining one's own character or identity. And again, this is something that is kind of fun to do, is interesting to do, to think, what is my occupation? What is it I really want to do? Why am I on this earth? What do I want to be doing? Not just my job. And this may not have anything to do with your job. You may identify as what I am really is a gym rat, or what I am really is a stay-at-home dad, or what I am really is I'm a total cooking freak, or what I am really is a football nut. what is it you love? What is it you care about? What is your character? Who are you? And then to figure out how that flows into what your job is. And maybe it is associated with your job, and maybe it's not associated with your job. But one of these things about combining work and life is really to understand what it is I love, what it is I enjoy, and what my occupation is. That is, what I want to spend my time doing. So that's an important work and life issue. And often this involves interweaving. And we talked about that in terms of managing time in the last talk. But, a lot of times these days you go to work, but maybe in the middle of the day you're on Facebook and you're doing social things with friends, or you're on Instagram, or you're tweeting, or maybe you take an hour or two off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to go watch your 7th grade son play soccer. Or maybe you take off at 3 o'clock because your 7th grade son is having a piano recital. These are things that, understanding my identity and my character and how that fits into my job. I'm a parent, I'm an architect, I'm a professor. How do all of these things work together? That's an essential thing in putting this work-life balance together. Then a third issue is how we spend our time and how we organize ourselves. One of the things is that notion of interweaving, where we mix our personal life and our professional life all through the day, or maybe it's a little more segmented than that. How we spend our time is absolutely critical, and that it results in whether we feel fulfilled or we don't feel fulfilled. And often there is a little bit of tension if we don't have flexibility in our jobs, but the flexibility is something that I think creative people are always searching for in their job. And always being able to take advantage of opportunities. That if our time is so locked in, then we can't take those opportunities to do what we really want to do and want to accomplish in our life. So this third issue is time and how we spend it. And the fourth issue is how we operate our cycle of life. And there are a lot of choices in this regard these days. There's some people that have what you might call front-loaded careers. And there's some areas of pursuit, especially creative pursuits, where maybe you need to have a front-loaded career. If you're going to be a musician, you probably better get yourself pretty established by the age of 30. If you're not, it's going to be a rough go. So that means you better bust your ass and really, have a lot of creative output in those years before you're 30, because in some ways, if you haven't established a career by then, it's very difficult. Even a university professor, if you're trying to get tenure, you got to bust your ass in that early career and establish yourself as a leader in your field in order to get tenure. So that means a front-end loaded career. Then there are other people that have very steady state careers. In some disciplines, this is more the rule than the exception. So if you're a nurse or if you're a dentist, what you're doing in the first few years of your career is probably not that different from what you're going to be doing in the 30 years from now. So this is a more steady state kind of career. And then there's some people who, especially maybe an entrepreneur, where I'm going to pour myself into my career, and then at age 55, I'm going to sell my company, and I'm going to be retired for 35 years, and travel, and play golf, and do whatever I want, and not have a job for a long segment of my life. That's another kind of cycle of life and planning of that. There are people who have multiple careers. Maybe I do this for 10 years, then I have a career shift, and maybe I go back to school, and I do something else for a period of time. So thinking through cycles of life, that's another important element of resolving work-life issues. So those four things, We're individually responsible for maintaining our creativity. We've got to be careful about how we spend our time and how we allocate it. We've got to define our own character, what we want to be and who we are. And we need to think about the cycles of our life and how that is impacted and how that impacts how good we are at creative problem solving. So it's one thing for all of us to figure out individually what are issues in work, what are issues in life, what are issues in the combination of work and life. But then how does the society welcome us and help us flourish doing all of those things? And I think there are several ways that society responds. One is to understand what do creative people value and what's important to them, and that we actually make those things happen. And there are three things, I think, that creative people value enormously. One is individuality. And that just means that you're able to, we're not trying to fit people into a mold, but there's a possibility of being yourself. And that is critical, I think, in making people feel supported in their work and life issues. That everybody's different, everybody's got an individual case. I heard a wonderful thing the other day, a definition of the difference between equality and equity. And they use the analogy of a garden. If you have a garden full of a lot of different plants and you treat them with equality, then you give all of them the same amount of water, and you give all of them the same amount of sunshine, and you give all of them the same amount of fertilizer, you're going to kill some plants, and some plants are going to thrive. But some plants need more water, some plants need less water, some plants need more sun, need less sun. So if you treat them equally with equality, they're not going to thrive. But what you need to do is treat them with equity. You're looking at individually how much sun does that plant need, so we give them the sun they need, and this other one that doesn't need so much sun, we give them less sun. And that we're treating them with equity instead of equality. And that's what individuality is, always looking at people and treating them with equity. The second thing that creative people value and need is a meritocracy. They're saying, you know, just give me a shot at this. I want any gifts here, but if there's excellence being demonstrated here, it needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be rewarded and it needs to prevail. And I think this is a huge thing for creative people. They don't want to be neglected, and they don't want to be given any gifts, but they want to be judged on the basis of their merits. And that's an important thing for the culture to have, to really support creative people. And then the third thing is that there is diversity and openness. The reason why creative people value diversity is because sometimes they're not necessarily fitting in perfectly. A lot of times creative people, especially maybe when they were in junior high and high school, they didn't fit perfectly. That doesn't mean they weren't super popular or, you know, outwardly it seemed like they were fine, but most of them, they had a little bit of grit, a little bit of itch, a little bit of, I don't know, just feeling a little different from other people. And if you're in a diverse population, then it's much more comfortable to be different than if you're in a homogeneous population and you feel like an outcast because you're different from other people. So creative people who often don't feel like they fit and they're like everybody else appreciate diversity because it gives them the opportunity to feel like all kinds of people are accepted here, and I'm one of many diverse kinds of populations that can thrive here. And I can be open about that. So creative people value individuality, meritocracy, and diversity and openness. And then what in the culture is necessary to really make creative work thrive? And there are several things that are necessary to keep a creative culture going. One of those is we need some systems for technological creativity and entrepreneurship. And this is primarily things like venture capital and limited partnerships and financial risk-taking. So one of the things that makes creative ideas thrive is when there is capital available to back it and turn it into a company and get some fruition from it. So if we're really going to maximize creativity in the society, we have to have some system for financial support. And that means some kind of financial risk-taking that's out there in the marketplace. Very, very important. A second thing that the culture needs to provide is technical and economic creativity alongside artistic and cultural creativity. And this often is a formula that's super essential. And that's one reason why Austin is often pointed to as a center for creativity, because we've got a kind of tech community and professional community that's entrepreneurial and innovative and forward-thinking. But we also have an art scene, a music scene, a cultural scene that is also innovative. And those two things mix together really well. I'm even interested in the fact that we've struggled and we're trying hard to keep our music scene downtown. So it's right next to that place where Google has located their headquarters, or Facebook has located their headquarters, or banking and financial institutions have located their main center of operation. It's just like 2 blocks away from music scene and clubs and creative work in that regard. And this is why all over, I mean, there's been this burgeoning in the creative age of art museums and concert halls and music festivals, and all those kinds of things are super important that these things mesh together. So we not only need to support a creative culture financially, but we also need to support it artistically so that those cultural innovations are right there with the business innovations. Then a third force that's necessary to keep a creative culture going is a supportive environment with a broad array of social stimuli and intensification and interaction, so that there's a place where you can be with other creative people. There's a place where you can mingle, interact, have conversations, see cool things. And that might be at sports events. It might be at fitness events like, Capital 10,000. It could be at concerts like ACL or South by Southwest. Maybe South by Southwest is kind of the ultimate of this kind of activity, in that it's, first they have South by Southwest Interactive, which is all the kind of computer nerds, and then they have South by Southwest EDU, which is all the education people, and then they have South by Southwest Film, and that's all the media kinds of things, and then they have South by Southwest Music, and that's the music makers and fans. But that's kind of the ultimate in a supportive environment with a broad array of social stimuli and interaction possibilities. And that 3 or 4 weeks every spring in Austin is an incredibly intense and important time for supporting a creative community and keeping a creative culture going. And then the fourth and final thing is that there need to be places. There need to be cool places to hang out and to spend time. Again, this is something that cities that want to thrive in the 21st century have realized that we have to have great park systems. We have to have wonderful plazas and places where there can be a concert on Saturday afternoon. There need to be really cool farmers markets. There need to be entertainment districts. There need to be concert halls. All of these kinds of places where culture and ideas interact, those are incredibly important. And interestingly enough, this is what Richard Florida says. He's all over this idea of places. And that's what cities need to do to put themselves in the realm of supporting a creative culture. So This is kind of the last of these talks that we've been looking at. How do we run our life? How do we run our work? How do we combine life and work? How does then the culture or the city or the economy support that financially, support that psychologically, support that in terms of arts and experience? And how do we then really step up our game in terms of being a place where creative problem solving thrives? Okay, we'll talk about this more in the check-in, and I'll see you later.